Hey, good morning, guys. So, another members only stream, right? This is on the back of a couple of the technical questions, right? So, um, first technical question is to do with the ABC correction, right? Now, I'm kind of guessing, um, I suppose I'm guessing what you really want to know with this is, how do you know whether it's going to be an ABC or whether it's going to be the A, B, C, D, and E? Um, Look, a lot of it comes down to ABC itself, right? So if I couple the two questions together, it actually is quite useful, right? These two, I guess, kind of are very similar, very comparable in terms of the understanding, right? So when you have a move in terms of Elliott, let me find the Elliott cycles. The impulsive moves, right? And this is why I keep saying I don't really care too much about the corrective moves because these things only have three rules, right? Rule number one is obviously two can't go below zero. Rule number two is three can't be the shortest, right? In terms of the two to three, four to five, and 0 to 1. Now, there's nothing stopping, right? Something like this happening, right? Where let's just assume that we have, a very small move. One is quite big, like this, three just above, four, and then we get a very small five like this, right? Now, there's no harm in this because 4 to 5 was actually the shortest, right? It wasn't 2 to 3. Obviously, in an impulsive move, what you'd expect is large pullback, very aggressive three, sideways four, right? And then sometimes truncated five, which basically means creating some kind of double top, right? Now, why I keep saying in terms of the logic is if you think of these rules, right? I know these were the only two. The third rule is four can't come into the territory of this, right? So again, you don't really expect it to be too deep. The deeper this is, the more chance you've got of this being, kind of crap, right? Now, the reason that would be more crap is for ultimately the whole logical reasons again, right? Is in an impulsive move, you're expecting momentum. When the momentum kind of weakens or dwindles, you tend to see these things kind of not happening, right? So, when I look back at the move up to 69K, and I'd said, look, we're only going to get 65K, a little bit of hopium, and then we're coming back down to 40K. The reason behind that and the logic behind that is quite simply without the momentum in the most aggressive part. If we don't see momentum here, right, and then we see this kind of crappy, move here that doesn't go, all the way or comes down close to, then you're going to see, this, maybe this, but you're not very likely to see this, right? So at that particular point, you've got to understand what's going on, what's causing the move, what's happening behind the move, right? Now, part of the reason I don't like the corrective moves is that just like the technical question, inside that move, you can have a very simplistic A, B, C, right? However, because of the amount of options, right, and lack of rules, there's almost no logic to it because you could have, a running flat, right, and we ultimately end up doing something like this to come down. You could have an expanded flat where you have something like this, and then this kind of all the way. You could have a zigzag that ultimately looks something like this. So there's just too many options to try to guess, right? And as a professional trader, what you're trying to do is to take away all of the guesswork, right? So for me, part of the reason that this happens, right? And again, this is what you've got to be thinking about logically, is if we see a move that comes down like this, right? Then you can almost say that there's an ABC done, right? Now, it doesn't mean that we're just going to go and do this, right? But it could. And again, part of the reason I don't like just assuming, right, is if we do something like this, compared to, given the corrective waves can't be five, when you see, an A, B, C, D, E, like this. What you then expect is the inverse, right, like this, to then give another move, right? And the other move, I'll get rid of this. The other move, right, could then be back down like this, right? Creating again some form of double bottom, right? Now, the only thing for me with that is because you can't complete a corrective move on a 5, you'd anticipate that the correction is not really done yet, right? So that's the only major advantage, if you will. But honestly, the best way to treat this, right, is just not to think about it, right? Not to try to go into depth and detail and try to find all the fibs and the swings and the levels, right? What you want to be thinking about is just the reason why, right? So if you end up seeing A, B, C, D, E, right, all the way down, you kind of know that we're expecting, more of a move, right? Now, this is where the second question comes in. When you look at this candle here, right, and I've put this on a 1 hour time frame, this could be obviously the bigger the time frame, the more likely the move, or the more powerful the move, right? Now, what happens is we have this really aggressive move down, and then we go kind of sideways, right? It's not until we break this level here, right, that point there, let me just put that in there. It's not until we break this point here, right? And when I say there, I'm talking more about this candle, right? Because this breaks the structure to the downside, right, altogether, we had double bottoms here, right? So there's liquidity in and around. Where do I put my pen here? There's liquidity in here, right? We had a bounce, but what happens is this bounce failed to make a new high, right? So again, going back to the logic of the A, B, C, and D, right? If we look at what's going on behind the move, what we're actually seeing is a lack of buying in that point, right? Because we had a very aggressive buy order come in here, right? Or buy orders come in here. And then we kind of, we failed to make the high, right? We then come all the way back down, double bottom. We failed to make a low. But at this particular point, the trend was inevitably down, right? Because we got these lower highs and lower lows forming, right? So, grand scheme, downtrend, obvious, simple, right? Then what you're looking for is what causes the moves, to the downside, given that downwards is where we were pointing, right? When we then fuel from this last candle, it was this last candle's, right? Basically, the buyers that were in here got stopped out, jumped out, bailed out, took a break even trade, whatever it might be. And it was this move that fueled the breaker structure here and here. So that's a very powerful little green candle, right? Now, when I talk about candle stories and I think of candle stories, I'm looking for the logic inside of that candle as to, well, why? What happened? Well, look, at that last green candle, we had the last of the buyers really before the momentum took out this low and this low and this low, which means that's very powerful. So when the price drops, down, we come back, we fail to make a new high, we come down, make a new low. The controlling candle is still this one at the moment. So when the price grinds up towards it, right, we are seeing a downward move with a pullback. Where's the pullback likely to get its fuel from? Well, there, right? So if you refine it, you can go into, a 5-minute chart if you want. You can go back out to a 4-hour chart. But the general idea is it's the same thing, right? Now, on the way up, we could say, move up, move back down, right? It was this candle here, look, right? This last red one. So if I zoom in on that a second, let me get rid of all of these, right? If I zoom in on this last red one, you can see the same thing happen over and over and over again, right? This last sell before the buy didn't take out any of these prior highs. Then we come back, and then we have the aggressive move. So it's this candle to the downside, which is currently controlling the fuel to the upside. So if I was to stick a box on this and bring that out, well, no surprise, when we come back in, we dart away from it again. But given the bigger trend was down, although this is a tiny little candle, there are more active sellers there than we have active buyers here, right? Now this has been mitigated. The mitigation itself becomes a buy-in symbol, right? And what you then have is we can swap this from there to this one, right? And all I'm doing is following the logic, following the liquidity, right? So what happens now is if we assume that the tag of this happened, right? And obviously it was about $3. I think the low on this candle, was 69,450 dead, and the high on this candle was 69,453. So $3.94 in terms of the difference, right? So I'm guessing if you go into a 15-minute, the discrepancy is going to be kind of in there. That candle will have a smaller candle again, or the final candle might be to do with this candle here overall, right? So it's tap liquidity and we've had a rejection. However, if this now holds, right, we can expect another retest of this area. If this breaks this candle low, right, this becomes almost like a flip in terms of the buys to the sells, right? So when I say this, that's a good looking P. There we go. Right. So if you think of what's going on, price takes out this low here. Then we've created a new low. So we then have a high. We have a new low, which has broken the structure. We come back up and we'll be looking for the last driving candle that takes out that low. So I would assume at the moment, if we go 2 to the left, 2 to the right, this one is probably a little bit lower. 2 to the left, 2 to the right, 2 to the left, 2 to the right, which means the control at this point would still be this high candle up here if we were to drop down through the low right now, right? Now, obviously, this could change because it could bounce up a little bit, creating a new high. And when I say a new high, I'm talking about a high above these couple of candles here. If we create a new high, which would be technically the A, followed by the B, and then the high, and the C takes out this low, then ultimately the driver candle isn't going to be this one anymore. It'll be wherever the AB move is, right? So just for you to see what I'm talking about with the ABC, is you'd be thinking something along the lines of, we fail to make a low, we come back and put in a new high, then we flip through the zone, right, giving us, your 1618 and whatever it might be in terms of an extension. And then this area, this flip zone, basically becomes the resistance for the future, but it will also end up highlighting that driver candle. So what you'll end up having is probably a driver candle that potentially does something like this, overlapping those two zones, right? You'll then be able to get rid of this one. Then you'll get rid of this one. And then that becomes the area of interest for any kind of pull back, right? So if we were to see then a move like this, I'd be looking for something that looks like this, right? And at that particular point, all I've done bigger picture is I've then gone in and put in my A. I don't know why this is loading so long. I would have gone in and I would have put in my A at this point. It's done it again. Sorry, guys. 2 seconds. So yeah, back to question one would be, you'd be putting in an A. I'll just drag that in case I get the same issues again. This would be your B, right? Or that's the general idea. I've got rid of it. Well, anyway, you get the point. I don't know why that's lagging a bit there, but you get the general idea. A, this would be a B, then you'd look for the C down, right? Now, this could turn into the A, B, C, D, and E, which means, we could drop down to these lows, right? But by putting in the candle that drives the move, I want to see one thing and one thing only. Does it break the structure in the direction opposite, or does it fail to break that structure? If we fail to break the structure, there's nothing stopping us going, up to where the B is, back down into this zone, and then following through, creating a new high. But all I'm doing is following the liquidity. All right. So anyway, I'm going to finish this there. Sorry for the delay, the lag, and I'll see you on the next stream. Thanks for watching, guys.